Hello, fellow patriots. Tony really sets the record straight on the petrodollar, gold, influence of oil pricing, free market versus a socialist economy, and the value of U.S. presence in the countries surrounding Russia. This episode is best viewed as a video because of critical information depicted on a map of Russian pipelines. Also, be sure to watch the video detailing the Trump wiretapping controversy. Thanks again for your comments left on our 24/7 phone line at 541-946-8721. And now on with the show.
Welcome to Patriot Radio America. And now your host, Tony Breitling.
Welcome back, all. We have a great audio lined up for you guys. I'm not going to go too far into this stuff because we have a second audio out, and it's a montage of clips on different interviews and stuff on the wiretap that basically President Trump is accusing that he's been wiretapped and he has the proof. And so, you know, there's all these opinions and stuff out there. So what we did is we put together a montage of the videos that, you know, these guys talk about what exactly happened. So, you know, like I said, we want to put you in front of the best of the best. Here's the thing, you guys. I didn't do any commentary on it because I wanted to give you guys kind of a homework assignment, and I want you to write down everything that is provable, like the meetings that Trump had with certain ex-NSA agents. And there's a guy from he's an ex-CIA agent talking about that incident. And then you have a gentleman that used to be part of the Secret Service that protected Obama, and he talks about some of the ins and outs. So you want to go look up in YouTube some of his other talks on what's going on and what happened, because he swears up and down that there was a wiretap. But anyways, I just wanted to be able to put timelines in front of you. And the only way to do that is simply count. And that's how I actually do my homework, is I actually kind of categorize everything in time. And it's a great tool. That's the first thing that we learn on how to put together, the history and policy and what happened and understand it, instead of listening to what people said. It's like, okay, what law was passed and what effect did it have? Or what law was, let's say in foreign policy, what agreements did we have with another country? What did it do? And just if you simply go by those timelines, you're looking at a whole different ballgame. What numbers came out because of that? Zero opinions, none. Just events, policy, and the timeline. And guess what, you guys? You know, it's clear as a bell. Remarkable. But I want to do a little bit of a commentary, or actually do a little bit of feedback on the last audio that I did, because I was talking about currency and going back a little bit into the past and talking about the petrodollar. And so I got bombarded with, at the end of it, if you guys haven't heard it yet, you have to listen to it. But I talked a little bit about gold and some of the myths behind it, or because of the way that we set up the petrodollar and the way that countries that don't produce oil, if they need US dollars to buy oil, how do they do that? They make products and then they ship it to us. We buy it. They get US dollars. Now they can go buy oil. And so, so the question is, or the argument is that, you know, you have these gold peddlers that just, you know, it's like if you look at the chart, and historically, if you look at the chart and then you have this inflation, which turns into hyperinflation based on how much currency they print. Okay, you guys, look, here's the thing. If you have a certain amount of people, if you have 350 million Americans around there, and that's it, it stays at that level, or it grows at 2.3% every 2 years or whatever, it doesn't matter. If you have that locked in number and you start printing the currency, yeah, that's what happens. It always happens that way. But that's not the case. And that's what I said in my last audio. And I'm going to add a little bit more to it, but I want to be thorough here. So, you know, we have about 4 trillion US dollars that are out there, electronic and whatever they printed and mint. So what people don't understand is that the world is more and more hungry for energy. And where do they need to buy energy with? They need US dollars. And how do they get US dollars? They build products or make products or provide services, and they sell them in US dollars. In return, they get US dollars so they can buy more energy. And because the world's is expanding on its activity and more people are coming out of the Stone Age, guess what? You need more dollars. That's why we're printing dollars. There's other factors too. What did I talk about for the last 8 years? There's a balance, you guys. We can't lower it too much or go up too much and lower the value too much because of those factors. But what about China? One of our attacks about attacking their labor market is to lower the value of the US dollar. So there's that factor. It's never just one thing. There's always multiple reasons. But one of the arguments that came out was this guy said, hey, look, if you have gold, then you'll never see that inflation. You'll never see that type of, you guys, we were on gold. We did have the gold standard. And what did the French do? They're the ones who started it. They accused us of printing more dollars that represented the gold we had. They said, look, you guys are printing way more dollars. We know you don't have that much gold. And so what did they started to do? They started exchanging dollars for gold, because they didn't have confidence in the US dollar. And within a small period of time, we lost 50% of our gold reserve. And so gold's not the answer. Now here's another factor also, an investment factor. And this is what blows me away. It blows my mind. And I was talking about this with Bob, and we're both kind of laughing because if you historically look at gold and you have currencies that are pegged to the price of gold, I want somebody to show me the chart somewhere where how this gold, its price moves up and down, because it doesn't. It can't. Think about this. If the price of gold moves up and down and all the currencies are backed by gold, or there's a currency that's backed by gold and everybody uses that currency, what difference does it make? It's going to fluctuate too much for people to even figure out how it's going to work. So the price of gold's going up and down, and you're at the market with a buck trying to figure out if you can buy that piece of bubble gum or not. That's why they have fixed rates using gold. So you don't want to invest in gold because it's not going to go up or down. It's not going to fluctuate like it does now under speculation. It's a free market. You guys, it's all nuts. It's all part of, the world's going to end and you better do this. And it's all absolutely, none of the math makes sense. The best hope for gold and for it to rise in value is for the US dollar to be backed by the petrol and the supply times velocity, and that, the recycling of the petrodollar. That's gold's, its best hope. We can hedge against certain problems. Gold's a good investment under the petrodollar. But if the gold was the backed currency, then guess what? It's not going to move. All you have to do is go look at the charts. Look at gold when it was, it was pegged at $35. It stayed there. That's pretty simple, right? For some reason, I don't know if they're not looking at it correctly or they're just, you guys, it's all about hype. It's always about hype, all right? Great investment. It is an opportunity, but it's not an opportunity if the dollar falls. Because if they go back to the gold standard in any way, shape, or form, they can't have it fluctuate. It would destroy the economy. It doesn't make sense, does it? When you look at the charts and you look at the numbers correctly. And you guys, there's a gentleman out there. They put together hours and hours and hours of videos on how gold works, and they don't know how gold works. They talk about how fiat currencies don't last very long. Well, the US dollar is not a fiat currency. There was a small window when we got out of the gold standard, and it was a fiat currency. We had not yet solidified the deal that we had with Saudi Arabia for them to peg the price of oil to the US dollar. And then from that point on, that doesn't mean everybody's using the dollar right away. You guys, that was just one country. Then we had to get involved with the other OPEC countries. Then we had to get involved with other countries and say, hey, this is how the system works. So there was this transmission belt, so to speak. You know what I mean? A little bit of slippage up until the US dollar started started doing what these guys set it up to do. And that's how it works. So, it is what it is, you guys. I know there's people out there it's like a religion. It doesn't matter if people have been shown that they're incorrect because it's sacred to them. Guess what? They're never going to admit that they were wrong, or they're never going to look at it in a different way, and we're all guilty of it. Some, one way or another. But that's the way it is, and that's the best way to explain it. I wanted to be able to go through that because I got so many email based on that, because people have been fed so much. It's the same thing, the same reason you guys, I got into talking about the Iraqi dinar. And by the way, I want to thank you guys about, or the Iraq Stock Exchange, on the comments and the thank yous that we got, because, you know, I don't think I've ever gotten that many thank yous before, and I've done a lot of audios. I actually took down a YouTube site that probably had about 200 or 300 audios on it. I think the one that we have up now has 1,800 on it. I've been doing this, and I don't think I've had that many thank yous ever on that last audio. So I want to thank you guys, because you guys are the ones who encouraged me. I know it took us a while to put it up, but I just had to do the research and I had other stuff going on. And, thank you very much, you guys. There's more, by the way. There's more that has to do with geopolitics, and that's where it came from. That's if you understand why I know what I know about Iraq, it's because it's the same geopolitics. It has to do with the petrodollar. I know every move. In fact, what I'm going to talk today, the other questions that people are asking me about on talking about, McCain and Rand Paul, sorry, and they're back and forth. I'm not really interested into the chick drama that they have, but there's something important that's underlined on what they're arguing about. It all has to do with geopolitics, and it has to do with the U.S. petrodollar, and it has to do with what we've been talking about. So anyways, I'm going to go to a quick break, you guys, and we'll be right back.
Imperial Foot Spa. Full body massage.
Wow.
I get the full body massage. Oh gosh, they start from my head all the way down to my toes. It's sensational.
Foot reflexology.
I like the place. It's very accommodating, clean, professional. They focus on designated areas if you tell them to.
2095 North Dobson Road, northeast corner of Dobson and Warner in Lely Shopping Center, Chandler, Arizona.
Certain place that's bothering you, they will concentrate on that.
Ooh.
480-812-1689.
Welcome back. Very interesting, you guys. I want people to pay attention because there's so much principle and there's so much history on what's going on with Venezuela. It has to do with everything that we're talking about, even with Iraq. It's a remarkable journey in history and principle and understand what's going on. So what I want to do is I want to give you guys a small brief on to set this up correctly, and then we'll go over. I think it's about 12 steps on what happened. But in the middle, I'm going to kind of interject different scenarios that happen with other countries to kind of give you guys the full picture. So coming out of the early 70s, what happened? The United States got out of the Bretton Woods agreement. We got off the gold standard. And then for a while there, we were fiat currency. So a lot of people don't understand this. It's like, well, wait a minute, aren't we on a fiat currency? No, we're not on a fiat currency now. It's not a fiat currency. And so what did we do? We went to Saudi Arabia and we said, hey, why don't you guys attach your oil to the US dollar? We'll create the petrodollar, and here's what you get. And we gave them a whole slew of things. They said, that sounds fantastic. And so it created the petrodollar. People don't realize this. It was only one country. It took us a while to build and get the rest of the countries in OPEC on the petrodollar and how it worked. And then we had to convince countries to actually ship products to the United States so we can buy them with currency so they can have US dollars and then buy the petrodollar, and you have that cycle. Very remarkable process, very remarkable program. So anyways, that's what happened. And then moving along, you had the Iraq-Iran war. And so that, well, I got to go back. Even though we did that, when they attacked Israel, you guys, they did an embargo on the West. And they didn't stop shipping stuff to us. What they did is they turned the faucets off, and it caused the prices of oil to go up. It instantly put the West in a recession. All these guys talk about this is what happened, the bankers did this, and you guys, you're so full of crap. It was specifically had to do with energy. It was the first time it was used as a weapon, and it worked. The West suffered for supporting Israel. And so moving forward, you have that scenario. We're put into a recession, and that recession lasted through Nixon, through Ford, and through Jimmy Carter. And then in the middle of that, you had the Iraq-Iran war, where, as I mentioned in the last audio I did on currency, Saddam Hussein gets pissed because he's in the middle of this war. Iran turned their back on us. So, we're trying to punish them. We're trying to get control of energy, the West. And so it's a proxy going on. And so Saddam had his own desires. So, hey, let's work together, right? Next thing you know, Kuwait turns the oil faucets on, and, they up their production by 20%, causes the price of oil to go down. You guys, it was still high, remember. So, it's like, well, if the oil prices went down, how come the West didn't come out of the recession? It didn't go down far enough. That's two scenarios where you had, where the oil was being adjusted. But in the end, what we did is Ronald Reagan was elected, and it was you guys, there was multiple reasons why he did this, but it's actually brilliant. And once you figure this out, you'll be like, Eureka, I understand it. I get it. I know exactly what we did. And it will have everything to do with what Trump's doing. And that's why you need to understand what's going on. Ronald Reagan went to Saudi Arabia. We were in a recession. We were in a fight with the USSR. He goes to Saudi Arabia and he makes a deal with them. We'll give you F-15s and AWACS airplanes if you turn on those faucets and flood the market with oil. We need you to crash the prices. And here's why. And guess what? Saudi Arabia agreed. And they did. And it crushed the OPEC countries. So here's the thing, you guys. When OPEC makes a lot of money and the oil prices are up, the West gets hurt. When the prices are down, the West doesn't get hurt. We grow. We get bigger. So what do? We came out of a recession. Why? Because you have money in your pocket, and not only can you get gas for your car, but you could probably buy a candy bar at the Exxon down the street, and then you could probably take a longer vacation, stay at that Holiday Inn that's, wherever you went, and you guys understand the principle, and that's what happens. And so guess what? We literally got out of a recession because of oil prices. And it also, because of oil prices, it crushed the USSR. Because what we did, if you listen to Herb Myers, we turned our budget up. And it means everything to the Russians because they had to be able to follow that or counteract that. They couldn't. You know why? Because they depended on the price of oil. And so it crushed them. And that's what killed the USSR, was the price of oil. And that's why Putin, by the way, is trying to make sure that doesn't happen again, but he's going to lose. And we'll go over that in a different audio, but it's that important. But what about Venezuela? Venezuela, you guys, because the oil prices, their economy collapsed. It created inflation. But specifically, how did it do that? And why are they in the situation that they're in today? Well, what happened, they couldn't pay for the infrastructure, what they planned on doing because of the prices of oil. So what happens, if your currency isn't going to make it and people don't have confidence in the infrastructure, and then you have, leftist governments getting in power, what happens? It creates what's called capital flight. Capital flight comes from the middle and upper class, where, if their currency or their country is threatened, they take their money out of the country. They don't necessarily leave the country themselves. They just put their currency or convert it or store it somewhere else. And what it does is it destroys the supply times velocity of the hosting country. And so that was the beginning of the end for the Venezuelan economy, because what happened is that causing the flight, destroying the supply times velocity, instantly made imports expensive because people didn't want to bring goods into Venezuela. Why? Because their currency wasn't worth anything. And so what's the other end of it? What about the exports? Well, what's going on right now? It created a situation where, well, let me go back a step. I want you guys to understand these numbers. All right. A coup was attempted. And it failed. But what happened? And this is what happens in all the South American countries, where you have, when the leftists take over, 100% of the time, the middle class and the upper class ship their money out of the country, capital flight. And so the supply times velocity of their currency goes down, completely destroys before the Marxists can ever get a foothold on anything. Their economy is already destroyed. You know why? Because the people don't support them. It doesn't matter what the news says. It doesn't matter what propaganda comes out. You know if the people support them or not, because they wouldn't have sent all their money out of the country, right? That's how people who do the math know they're full of crap. It's like, oh yeah, no, everybody wants this. Yeah, right. Everybody just sent all their money out of the country. Well, it creates inflation. And then so, what happens, these South American countries, what the CIA does, we go down there and we print their currency also. So there's this pressure from the top where you have capital flight, and then you have pressure from the bottom where we're interjecting currency, and it completely collapses their currency. And here's the exact formula. I mean, this has been going on since France, the Renaissance and all that stuff, where they actually figured out a number where if somebody spends 40% of their income on food, they rebel. And it happens every single time. If you guys go look at this last rebellion that they had with Egypt, what were they doing? They were spending 40% of their income on food. You guys, it happens every time. And that's what we're trying to do with Iran. If we can't do something with them militarily, guess what? We're going to try to cause that to happen. Well, we can't do that happen when we have economic agreements with them, right? With Obama, right? So it doesn't work. But anyways, I know I got off a little bit, but that's what happened with Venezuela. They reduced the supply times velocity, and the imports got expensive. But the problem that they're having now, it's like, what's all the shortages coming from? Well, what's going on is that they can take that product that's being made, or their products from agriculture in Venezuela, and they can take it to Colombia. They can take it to these other countries. And guess what they can get for that? They can get US dollars. So they get 10 times what it's really worth, actually more than that. And then they take that money, they go back to Venezuela, and then they exchange the money back to the Venezuela currency, and they got a ton of it, right? They buy more product, and they take that product and they go to Colombia, they get more dollars, and that's how they're making money. So you got the rich and the middle class just kicking ass and taking names. The poor have no chance, but what it's doing is depleting Venezuela of its resources. You guys, they have plenty of agriculture there, but you watch the news, it's like, how are these people starving? What's the exact cause of these people going through this? Well, that's why. It's the exports that are killing them, because they can't make any money unless they export. And so what happens? They drive the price. It drives the price up. Basically, it's, what do they call it? They call it a loop inside of a loop, and it happens all the time with Marxist countries, because people try to find some type of free market solution. Everybody, think about it. Everybody's got to eat. Everybody's got to have a living. Everybody's got to figure out how to, we don't want to just survive. Happens every time, you guys. Every time. Russia had a solution for that, by the way. It was a very, very good economic solution. Just kill everybody. Anybody has those thoughts, just keep killing them. And if they have a population problem, fine. They just take over another country, and they got 50 more million people there that they can go through that process again. That's how they dealt with it, the USSR. So here's another problem that you guys need to understand. We'll go into a commercial here. What about the solutions that they tried in Venezuela? Well, Chavez came up with a brilliant idea. He took his own reserve, his currency reserve, and started buying his own currency with it. And the reason I brought that up is because it creates an artificial demand. But that's when you know your currency's in trouble. So as an indicator for the United States, it's not just inflation. We're to try to figure out when hyperinflation kicks in. When you see the government buying its own currency, it's in trouble. That's the main indicator. And it's universal, you guys. It's very universal. So Venezuela can't get out of this because they're locked in a government system, socialist system, where you can only use the Venezuelan currency. And the Venezuelan currency, its supply times velocity, is getting its ass kicked. And so they're never going to get out of it. It's just going to keep getting worse and worse and worse. And the West, we just kind of sit here. We tell them, we've told them what to do. They even had an economist in Venezuela who could fix it. And Chavez was like, well, that's capitalism. We don't want that. And so he screwed his people again. There's also another problem. Think about this. They're selling oil still. They're selling oil at today's prices, and you're just barely keeping up with the crisis that's going on inside of Venezuela. So they're completely wasting their energy supply on nothing, on absolutely nothing. So it's worse than people in Venezuela think. They don't understand that their future is being destroyed. It's being wasted to feed the system. What's the system? It's a government-owned system, and it's bought and paid for by socialists. Anyways, you guys, we're gonna switch gears here. We're gonna go into the McCain, Rand Paul fiasco. And you guys will love it.
Do you like what you're hearing on Patriot Radio America? Well, you're not alone. Thousands of listeners tune in for each and every presentation, looking forward to the information and a new way of seeing how the world really works. Want to share your business, product, or service to all these listeners? Well, now you can. Patriot Radio America is growing, and part of that expansion includes marketing for businesses just like yours. Our special introductory offer includes your ad on every show for a month for the mere price of $100. To participate, simply contact me, Bob Adams, the program director, by email at bobadamsradioamerica@gmail.com. That's bobadamsradioamerica@gmail.com. Your message will be aired to our eager listeners, and while there are lots of ways to market, you can't beat word of mouth from a trusted source like Patriot Radio America.
Welcome back, everybody. This is going to be fun. We're going to play two audios. By the way, I want to apologize because I probably said so or whatever a million times. You guys, you can't imagine. I literally have not slept for a couple days, so I'm kind of blowing bubbles here, and I apologize. But this is fun, and I've been doing research on a book, putting stuff together, and doing this, and I love every minute of it. But we're going to play two audios, and Bob's going to play McCain, and then he's going to play Rand Paul, and in order. And because people are wondering what's going on, what's the big deal? Well, it means everything. It has to do with Russia. It has to do with the United States, oil prices, the whole thing. Geopolitics at the top. So, Bob, go ahead and roll the tape.
So, Mr. President, if there is objection, and I note the senator from Kentucky on the floor, I will say before I read this, if there is objection, you are achieving the objectives of Vladimir Putin. You're achieving the objectives of trying to dismember this small country that has already been the subject of attempted coup. I have no idea why anyone would object to this, except that I will say, if they object, they are now carrying out the desires and ambitions of Vladimir Putin, and I do not say that lightly. So, Mr. President, I ask unanimous consent that at a time to be determined by the Majority Leader in consultation with the Democratic Leader, the Senate proceed to executive session to consider calendar number 1, Montenegro Treaty Document 114-12, that the treaty be considered as having advanced through the various parliamentary stages up to and including the presentation of the resolution of ratification, that any committee declarations be agreed to as applicable, that there be no amendments in order to the treaty or the resolution of ratification, that there be 2 hours for debate, equally divided in the usual form. Upon the use of yielding back of time, the Senate proceed to vote on the resolution, that any statements be printed in the record as if read, that if the resolution of ratification is agreed to, the motion to reconsider be considered made and laid upon the table, that the President be immediately notified of the Senate's action, that if the resolution is not agreed to, the treaty will be returned to the calendar, and that there be no motions or point of order in order, and a motion to reconsider, and then the Senate then resume legislative session.
Mr. President? Senator from Kentucky.
I object.
Objection is heard.
Mr. President, I note the senator from Kentucky leaving the floor without justification or any rationale for the action that he has just taken. That is really remarkable. That a senator blocking a treaty that is supported by the overwhelming number, perhaps 98 at least, of his colleagues, would come to the floor and object and walk away. And walk away. The only conclusion you can draw when he walks away is he has no argument to be made. He has no justification for his objection to having a small nation be part of NATO that is under assault from the Russians. So I repeat again, the senator from Kentucky is now working for Vladimir Putin.
You want to go to Capitol Hill? Senator from Kentucky, member of the Foreign Relations Committee, Rand Paul. Senator, good morning. Good to see you.
Good morning.
We are going to get to health care in just a moment, but first want to get your reaction to the words Senator John McCain had for you from the Senate floor yesterday. Let's listen.
I note the senator from Kentucky leaving the floor without justification or any rationale for the action that he has just taken. That is really remarkable. That a senator blocking a treaty that is supported by the overwhelming number, perhaps 98 at least, of his colleagues, would come to the floor and object and walk away. And walk away. The only conclusion you can draw when he walks away is he has no argument to be made. He has no justification for his objection to having a small nation be part of NATO that is under assault from the Russians. So I repeat again, the senator from Kentucky is now working for Vladimir Putin.
So, Senator, a little context around that. The vote was around putting Montenegro into NATO. What's your reaction to Senator McCain's characterization of your objection?
Well, you know, I think he makes a really, really strong case, you know, for term limits. I think maybe he's past his prime. I think maybe he's gotten a little bit unhinged. I do think that when we talk about NATO, there can be a rational discussion about the pros and cons of expanding it. We currently have troops, combat troops, in about 6 nations. We have troops actively just stationed in probably a couple dozen others. We have a $20 trillion debt. And one of my favorite articles of the last couple of years was one that talked about the angry McCains. And if we put active troops and got involved in combat where McCain wants us to be, they put a little angry McCain on the globe, on the map, and it's virtually everywhere. So his foreign policy is something that would greatly endanger the United States, greatly overextend us. And there has to be the thought whether or not it's in our national interest to pledge to get involved with war if Montenegro has an altercation with anyone. There's also another argument, is that when you ask the people of Montenegro, only about 40% or slightly less are actually in favor of this. They are close to Russia. They're close to being sort of like Ukraine in the transition from Europe to Asia. Perhaps it would be good to be like Switzerland and be more neutral and trade with both. So there's a lot of considerations, but to call someone somehow an enemy of the state or a traitor might be considered by most reasonable people to be a little over the top.
Well, Senator,
Very interesting little back and forth drama, right? Doesn't mean too much. Well, actually it means everything. And what I want you guys, I always talk about that. I don't want to throw my opinion out. I want to go by history, events, and be able to present the exact math in front of you. But on this one, I can see what McCain wants, but at the same time, Rand Paul's logic is better. And so what is it that they're talking about, though? What does it mean? Well, Bob just put up a little clip up put a map up of the Ukraine. And if you look at that map, you see all these red lines going through. Those are the pipelines that come from Russia. So here's the exact math. And then you'll understand exactly what's going on between McCain and Rand Paul, and these guys in the news don't report any of this, even though this has to do with everything. 30% of the natural gas that Western Europe uses comes from Russia. 66% of that comes through the Ukraine. So it's a massive strategic hotspot for Russia. Look below that. What do you see? You see Montenegro. And that's what they were talking about. McCain wanted to create a pact with Montenegro so they can, they wanted to be partners in NATO. They didn't have to be NATO because if you look at the map, what do you see? You see a pipeline going through there. Okay, now look northwest, you guys. What do you see? You see Poland. Do you guys know that for the first time, since World War II, that there's been there's U.S. troops in Poland. So we've completely surrounded the Russian pipelines through the Ukraine and that little area, except for that little spot. And that's why McCain was banging on the table. He was pissed. That's why you're saying you're giving Putin a chance is what he was saying. And that's why the U.S. has enveloped Russia. And none of this is reported. That's what's unbelievable. But that's what the argument was about. But now let's look at, it's like, oh my God, well, a lot of people are saying McCain's nuts, and you hear this, and it's like, well, hey, he's not so nuts. You guys, I'm telling you, both of them are right. And so let me explain. Look at Ukraine and what's going on with the Ukraine. The majority of the people in Ukraine want to be partners with the West. And that's what happened. You had a president that was influenced, basically a puppet from Russia. They had a choice in front of them. They can be partners with Europe, make a lot of money, be a lot more prosperous, or they can be partners with Russia. And so, like any other liberal or Marxist, what do? They choose the lower paying job, just like any other idiot would. Think about that, you guys. You have two choices in front of you, a shitty paying job or a good paying job. What do you pick? You pick the shitty paying job. Hallelujah. What a bunch of winners. But they do it every single time. And then they try to give you some type of excuse or some type of moral reasoning that doesn't add up to anything. The whole thing's a lie in the first place. And so that's what happened. It pissed off Ukraine. The CIA got involved. We helped put together a coup, put a Western influenced president or prime minister in there. And then guess what? He picked the West. And then we started to block Russia and their oil or their natural gas and the oil supply going into Western Europe. The next move was Poland. And you didn't report that very much. If you read the news, it's like, yeah, they have you have some heavy artillery from the United States going into Poland. Wasn't that many? You guys, we don't need that many. You guys should see the troops, what these guys can do. I'll do another report on specifically that because it's very important. So yeah, Poland. And if you guys look at the pipelines on your map that's in front of you, what's left? It's that one pipeline down through Montenegro, Moldova, and that's it. They're completely bottled in. And Rand Paul was saying, hey, look, I understand it's very important what you're talking about. But if you look at the situation in Ukraine, the majority of the people are for being the West, and they still had a counter coup from Russia. Now you go down to that little spot in the country, we understand there's a pipeline going through it, but 40%, that's almost half of the people are for Russia. And then you're going to commit some type of agreement with them that if Russia jumps in, that we're going to have a military confrontation with Russia. You guys, it doesn't, the whole point of us doing what we're doing is so in the end, we don't have a confrontation with Russia. What are we doing? We're trying to choke the life out of them, and we're cutting off their energy. And so if you're too aggressive and it creates a war anyways, that defeats the whole purpose of us doing the step-by-step process of destroying Russia's economy by controlling its energy. That's why it's absolutely, unbelievable. You go on YouTube or any of these blogs out there where they're talking about Obama and Putin and how smart Putin is, what he's doing, because he hasn't won anything. Obama literally crushed his economy. Under Obama, we took over Poland, or didn't take over, we were invited into Poland. We took over the Ukraine. All right, all these things. I promise you this. He might have, I guarantee you he had to been dragged along a little bit because it's the power, the cabal. Everybody talks about these banking cabals. Nope, it's the U.S. Senate. I guarantee you they had to drag him along a little bit, and our generals. But, it was done. It was done. Putin didn't outsmart anybody. And then when he started messing around with some of the stuff that's going on in the Middle East, Turkey shot down one of his planes because it's like, hey, what are you doing? You're screwing up things. You're screwing up things for us. We know that you got to survive, but don't screw up things for us. And so around and around we go. You guys, that's a broad brush, right? I mean, I really didn't say anything there because I want to save it for another audio. But that's how important these two guys going back and forth, how important it was. And it's treated in the media as just two guys arguing. I mean, email me, you guys. Call the number that Bob puts up and tell me, have you heard anything that what I'm talking about or the numbers? There's nothing there. They don't want you to know. It's unbelievable. In fact, I don't even think they have confidence in you, enough confidence in you to understand if they, that's what they think. That's what the people at the top think, that you don't have the ability to understand anyways. And I don't say that lightly because that's exactly how these people think. But I believe in putting the math out in front of people. And if you have conversations with them, and then you start showing them the math, you guys, everybody gets it. There's nothing genius here at all. It's simple math, very simple math, understanding what's going on and what it is that you're looking at. Anyways, I wanted to wrap it up, but that's what you guys are looking at. And it has to do with what we did with Venezuela and what we're doing with, everything ties. And think about this, you guys. Think about this, a small recap. The oil prices dictate, and the supply dictate the American economy, all right? We've freed up the economy. Same thing with the EPA. If the left can't control the American economy with prices or the flow of oil, we'll just throw in sanctions, domestic sanctions, and we'll go through the EPA. Either way, we'll destroy the American economy. What difference does it make? And so I talked about at the very beginning of this audio, Ronald Reagan jumped in and he freed up the American market. How did he do that? He made it cheap again through cheap energy. What's Trump's answer to that? Same thing. What did he run on? I'm going to make America great again. Went to the same states that Ronald Reagan did and tried to get the Democrats to vote for Republicans just like Ronald Reagan did and said, I'm going to make America great again. What's he going to do? That was the counter, was the alternative move because the left doesn't have control over oil or the price. They used the EPA to try to stifle the economy. They didn't try, they did. And so watch what happens when Trump deregulates the country. It's going to breathe again. And it's going to have the exact same effect as Ronald Reagan. And it's not hype. It's not wishful thinking. It's exactly what's going to happen. And this is the only thing that I have a problem with. Do you think people will ever recognize that? People don't even know how we got out of the recession with Ronald Reagan. It's like, oh, yeah, we started manufacturing this and that. Just good policy. Well, what do you mean by good policy? Specifically, can you tell me why? Well, it's just good policy. I can't get anybody to tell me exactly what happened. What happened is you got the price of oil to go down. People will buy things anyways. Manufacturing will do its own, wonder all by itself. Supply times velocity and these, job creating venues. Same thing. If you deregulate the country. Do you guys understand what's at stake now? Do you understand why there's a war between the left and the right and the EPA, what's been going on? Do you understand why there's a war between OPEC and Russia and all these countries on the price of oil and why it means everything to the West to lower the prices or to keep them sustained at a lower price? Doesn't have to be, down to nothing. You don't want to destroy oil sector jobs. There's a balance and it means everything. It's not just dribble. So once you figure this stuff out and you start having these conversations, you watch the news and listen to the garbage they spew out. It has nothing to do with what we're talking about. Yet that's what you and I are after. Yet that's what you and I are worried about. Yet that's what affects your and my standard of living most. Isn't it remarkable? It's almost the same thing as when I talked about just the day before the election, I talked about how the Republicans have taken over the last 10 years. Email after email, people are like, what the hell have we been listening to? It's like the whole world was turned left and there's no Republicans left, no conservatism. And it was completely opposite. You guys need to stop listening to mainstream media. They're over anyways. They don't have their backing. Their backing came from Russia. They got their orders from Russia. Then it stopped. And now they've completely abandoned each other. And a couple audios on down the road, we'll go through that and you guys can figure out what's going on. But you guys, what remarkable events that are going on. But they're true. They're measurable. There's no confusion about it. It's there. And I'm the guy who gets to be able to present it to you, and it makes me happy. Thank you. God bless. Until the next audio, everybody, have a good one. Thanks all.
Thanks for listening, and now we get to listen to you. Your comments, questions, and suggestions are the inspiration of our research efforts. We highly encourage you to call in and leave your thoughts on our 24-hour phone line at 541-946-8721. Here are some voices of fellow patriots just like you.
I'm just calling to thank you so much for the last report I heard regarding dinar and a little bit of the history there, and it really got my confidence back up and my anxiety calmed down. So thank you for that, for the hard work you guys do. All right. Bye-bye.